Chapter 8 The Robin Who Showed the Way. She looked at the key for a very long time. She turned it over and over, thinking about it. As mentioned before, Mary was not a child who had been taught to ask permission or consult adults about anything. All she could think about was that if this was indeed the key to the closed garden, and if she could only find the door, she might be able to open it. Then she could see what was inside the walls, and what had happened to the old rose bushes. The fact that it had been locked away for so long made her want to see it even more. It felt as if it had to be different from any other place, and that something mysterious must have happened to it over the last 10 years. Besides, if she liked the garden, she could go inside every day, shut the door behind her, and make up her own games to play all by herself. No one would ever know where she was. They would just assume the door was still locked and the key was still buried in the earth. The thought of that delighted her. Living almost entirely by herself in a house with 100 mysteriously closed rooms, with nothing to do to pass the time, had started her inactive brain working and was actually waking up her imagination. There was no doubt that the fresh, strong, pure air from the moor had a lot to do with it. Just as the air had given her a healthy appetite, and fighting the wind had stirred her blood, these same things had stirred her mind. In India, she had always been too hot, listless, and weak to care about anything. But here, she was beginning to care, and she wanted to try new things. She already felt less stubborn and irritable, though she didn't know why. She put the key in her pocket and walked up and down her path. No one but Mary ever seemed to go there, so she could walk slowly and study the wall, or rather, the ivy growing on it. The ivy was the frustrating part. No matter how carefully she looked, she could see nothing but thick, glossy, dark green leaves. She was deeply disappointed. Some of her old irritability returned as she paced back and forth, looking over the wall at the treetops inside. It seemed so silly, she thought, to be so close to the garden and not be able to get inside. When she went back to the house, she kept the key in her pocket. She decided she would always carry it with her whenever she went outside, so she would be ready if she ever found the hidden door. Mrs. Medlock had allowed Martha to spend the night at her family's cottage, but she was back at work the next morning. Her cheeks were redder than ever, and she was in the best of spirits.
I got up at 4 o'clock,
she said.
Oh, it was beautiful on the moor with the birds waking up, the rabbits scampering about and the sun rising. I didn't have to walk the whole way either. A man gave me a ride in his cart and I had a wonderful time.
She was full of stories about the delights of her day off. Her mother had been so glad to see her, and they had finished all the baking and washing. Her mother had even made each of the children a little dough cake with a bit of brown sugar inside.
I had them all piping hot when the kids came in from playing on the moor.
Martha said.
The whole cottage smelled of delicious, clean, warm baking, and there was a cozy fire. They just shouted for joy. Our Dickon said our cottage was good enough for a king to live in.
In the evening, they had all sat around the fire. Martha and her mother patched torn clothes and mended stockings, while Martha told them about the little girl who had come from India. She explained how Mary had been waited on all her life by native servants, until she didn't even know how to put on her own stockings.
Oh, they did love hearing about you,
Martha said.
They wanted to know all about the Indian servants and the ship you sailed on. I couldn't tell them enough.
Mary thought about this for a moment. I'll tell you a lot more before your next day off, she said, so that you will have more to talk about. I am sure they would like to hear about riding on elephants and camels, and about the officers going to hunt tigers.
My goodness,
Martha cried out in delight.
It would drive them absolutely wild with excitement. Would you really do that, miss? It would be just like a wild animal show, like the one we heard they had in York once.
India is very different from Yorkshire, Mary said slowly, thinking about it. I never realized that before. Did Dickon and your mother like hearing about me?
Why, our Dickon's eyes nearly popped right out of his head. They got so round.
Martha answered.
But mother, she was quite upset that you seemed so lonely and left to yourself. She said, hasn't Mr. Craven got a governess or a nurse for her? And I said no, he hasn't, though Mrs. Medlock says he will when he remembers. but she says he might not think of it for 2 or 3 years.
I don't want a governess, Mary said sharply.
But Mother says you ought to be learning your lessons by now, and you ought to have a woman to look after you. She said to me, now Martha, just think how you would feel yourself in a massive place like that, wandering around all alone without a mother. You do your best to cheer her up, she said, and I told her I would.
Mary gave her a long, steady look. You do cheer me up, she said. I like listening to you talk. Soon, Martha left the room and returned holding something hidden under her apron.
What do you think?
She said with a cheerful grin.
I've brought you a present.
A present, Mary exclaimed. How could a family in a small cottage, with 14 hungry mouths to feed, give anyone a present?
A peddler was driving across the moor.
Martha explained.
He stopped his cart at our door. He had pots and pans and all sorts of odds and ends, but Mother didn't have any money to buy anything. Just as he was leaving, our Elizabeth Ellen called out, Mother, he is skipping ropes with red and blue handles. Then Mother called out all of a sudden, wait, stop, mister. How much are they? He said 2 pence, and Mother started fumbling in her pocket. She said to me, Martha, you've brought me your wages like a good girl, and I have 4 different places to spend every penny, but I am going to take 2 pence out of it to buy that child a skipping rope. And she bought one, and here it is.
She pulled it out from under her apron and showed it off quite proudly. It was a strong, slender rope with striped red and blue handles at each end. But Mary Lennox had never seen a skipping rope before. She stared at it, completely puzzled. What is it for? She asked curiously.
What for?
Martha cried out.
Do you mean to say they don't have skipping ropes in India, even with all their elephants, tigers and camels? No wonder they get so suntanned. This is what it's for, just watch me.
She ran into the middle of the room, took a handle in each hand, and began to skip and skip and skip. Mary turned in her chair to stare at her. Even the strange faces in the old portraits seemed to stare, wondering what on earth this ordinary little housemaid had the nerve to be doing right under their noses. But Martha did not even notice them. The interest and curiosity on Mary's face delighted her, and she kept skipping and counting until she reached 100.
I could skip longer than that,
she said when she stopped.
I used to skip as many as 500 times when I was 12, but I wasn't as heavy then as I am now, and I was in practice.
Mary stood up from her chair, beginning to feel excited herself. It looks fun, she said. Your mother is a very kind woman. Do you think I could ever skip like that?
You just try it.
Martha urged, handing her the skipping rope.
You won't be able to skip 100 at first, but if you practice, your numbers will go up. That's what Mother said. She says nothing will do her more good than a skipping rope. It's the most sensible toy a child can have. Let her play out in the fresh air skipping, and it will stretch her arms and legs and build up her strength.
It was clear that Mary did not have much strength in her arms and legs when she first began. She was not very good at it, but she liked it so much that she did not want to stop.
Put on your coat and hat and run out to skip outdoors,
Martha said.
Mother told me to tell you to stay outside as much as you can, even when it rains a little, as long as you wrap up warm.
Mary put on her coat and hat and slung the skipping rope over her arm. She opened the door to leave, but then she suddenly thought of something and turned back slowly. Martha, she said. Those were your wages, it was really your 2 pence, thank you. She said it stiffly, because she was not used to thanking people or noticing when they did things for her. Thank you, she repeated, holding out her hand because she didn't know what else to do. Martha gave her hand a clumsy little shake, as if she wasn't used to this sort of formality either. Then she laughed.
Oh, you are a strange, old-fashioned little thing,
she said.
If you were our Elizabeth Ellen, you would have given me a kiss.
Mary looked stiffer than ever. Do you want me to kiss you? Martha laughed again.
No, not me.
She answered.
If you were different, maybe you'd want to yourself, but you aren't. Run along outside and play with your rope.
Mary felt a little awkward as she left the room. Yorkshire people seemed strange, and Martha was always a bit of a puzzle to her. At first she had disliked her very much, but now she didn't. The skipping rope was a wonderful thing. She counted and skipped and counted, until her cheeks were quite red. She was more interested in what she was doing than she had ever been in her life. The sun was shining and a gentle wind was blowing, not a harsh wind, but one that came in delightful little gusts, bringing the fresh scent of newly turned earth. She skipped around the fountain garden and up and down the paths. Finally, she skipped into the kitchen garden and saw Ben Weatherstaff digging and talking to his robin, which was hopping around him. She skipped down the path toward him. He lifted his head and looked at her with a curious expression. She had wondered if he would notice her, and she wanted him to see her skip.
Well,
He exclaimed.
upon my word, maybe you are a child after all, and maybe you have child's blood in your veins instead of sour buttermilk. You've skipped colour into your cheeks, as sure as my name is Ben Weatherstaff. I wouldn't have believed you could do it.
I never skipped before. Mary said. I am just beginning. I can only go up to 20.
You keep at it.
Ben said.
You're doing well enough for a young one who has lived among foreigners. Just look at how he's watching you.
He added, nodding toward the robin.
He followed you yesterday, and he'll be back at it today. He's determined to find out what that skipping rope is. He's never seen one before. Oh.
He shook his head at the bird.
Your curiosity will be the death of you, one of these days, if you don't watch out.
Mary skipped all around the gardens and the orchard, resting every few minutes. At last, she went to her own special path and decided to see if she could skip the entire length of it. It was a long way to skip, and she started slowly. But before she was even halfway down the path, she was so hot and out of breath that she had to stop. She didn't mind much, though, because she had already counted to 30. She stopped with a little laugh of pleasure, and there, lo and behold, was the robin swaying on a long branch of ivy. He had followed her, and he greeted her with a friendly chirp. As Mary skipped toward him, she felt something heavy in her pocket bouncing against her leg with each jump. When she saw the robin, she laughed again. You showed me where the key was yesterday, she said. You ought to show me the door today, but I don't believe you know where it is. The robin flew from his swinging branch of ivy to the top of the wall. He opened his beak and sang a loud, lovely trill, purely to show off. Nothing in the world is quite as adorable as a robin when he shows off, and they are almost always doing it. Mary Lennox had heard a lot about magic in her nurse's stories, and she always believed that what happened next was pure magic. One of the pleasant gusts of wind rushed down the path, stronger than the ones before. It was strong enough to wave the tree branches, and more than strong enough to sway the trailing sprays of untrimmed ivy hanging from the wall. Mary had stepped close to the robin, when suddenly the gust of wind blew aside some loose hanging ivy. Even more suddenly, she leaped forward and caught the ivy in her hand. She did this because she had spotted something underneath it, a round knob that had been hidden by the leaves. It was the knob of a door. She reached her hands under the leaves and began to push them aside. Although the ivy was thick, it hung mostly like a loose, swinging curtain, though some of it had grown over the wood and iron. Mary's heart began to thump, and her hands shook a little with delight and excitement. The robin kept singing and twittering, tilting his head from side to side as if he were just as excited as she was. What was this square, iron object under her hands, where her fingers had found a hole? It was the lock of the door that had been closed for 10 years. She reached into her pocket, drew out the key, and found that it fitted the keyhole. She inserted the key and turned it. It took both of her hands to turn it, but it did turn. Then she took a deep breath and looked behind her down the long path to see if anyone was coming. No one was there. It seemed no one ever came. She took another deep breath, unable to help herself, held back the swinging curtain of ivy, and pushed the door. It opened slowly, very slowly. Then she slipped through the opening, shut the door behind her, and stood with her back against it. She looked around, breathing fast with excitement, wonder, and delight. She was standing inside the secret garden. Chapter 9: The Strangest House Anyone Ever Lived In. It was the sweetest, most mysterious-looking place anyone could imagine. The high walls that enclosed it were covered with the leafless stems of climbing roses, which were so thick that they were tangled together. Mary Lennox knew they were roses because she had seen many roses in India. The ground was covered with wintry brown grass, and out of it grew clumps of bushes that were surely rose bushes, if they were still alive. There were many standard rose bushes that had spread their branches until they looked like little trees. There were other trees in the garden, and one of the things that made the place look so strange and lovely was that climbing roses had run all over them. They swung down long tendrils that looked like light, swaying curtains. Here and there, the vines had caught onto each other or a far-reaching branch, creeping from tree to form lovely natural bridges. There were no leaves or roses on them now, and Mary did not know whether they were dead or alive. Still, their thin gray and brown branches looked like a hazy mantle spreading over everything: the walls, the trees, and even the brown grass where the vines had fallen and run along the ground. It was this hazy tangle from tree to tree that made everything look so mysterious. Mary had thought it would be different from other gardens that had not been left alone for so long, and indeed, it was different from any place she had ever seen in her life. "How quiet it is," she whispered. "How quiet." Then she waited a moment and listened to the stillness. The robin, who had flown to the top of his tree, was as still as everything else. He did not even flutter his wings. He sat without stirring, looking down at Mary. "No wonder it is so quiet," she whispered again. "I am the first person who has spoken in here for 10 years. She moved away from the door, stepping as softly as if she were afraid of waking someone. She was glad the grass was under her feet, so her steps made no sound. She walked under one of the fairy-like gray arches between the trees and looked up at the branches and tendrils that formed them. "I wonder if they are all completely dead," she said. "Is this a completely dead garden? I wish it wasn't." If she had been Ben Weatherstaff, she could have told if the wood was alive just by looking at it. But she could only see gray or brown branches, and none of them showed even the tiniest sign of a leaf bud anywhere. But she was inside the wonderful garden now. She could come through the door under the ivy at any time, and she felt as if she had found a world all of her own. The sun was shining inside the four walls, and the high arch of blue sky over this particular part of Misselthwaite seemed even more brilliant and soft than it did over the moor. The robin flew down from his treetop and hopped about, following her from one bush to another. He chirped a lot and looked very busy, as if he were showing her around. Everything was strange and silent, and she felt hundreds of miles away from anyone, but somehow she did not feel lonely at all. The only thing that troubled her was wishing she knew whether the roses were dead, or if some of them had survived and might grow leaves and buds as the weather got warmer. She did not want it to be a completely dead garden. If it were alive, how wonderful it would be, and what thousands of roses would bloom on every side. Her skipping rope had been hanging over her arm when she came in. After walking around for a while, she decided to skip around the entire garden, stopping whenever she wanted to look at something. There seemed to have been grass paths here and there, and in one or two corners, there were evergreen alcoves with stone seats or tall, moss-covered flower urns inside them. As she came near the second alcove, she stopped skipping. There had once been a flower bed inside it, and she thought she saw something sticking out of the black soil, some sharp little pale green points. She remembered what Ben Weatherstaff had said and knelt down to take a closer look. Yes, they are tiny growing plants, and they might be crocuses or snowdrops or daffodils, she whispered. She bent very close to them and sniffed the fresh scent of the damp earth. She liked it very much. "Perhaps there are more of them coming up in other places," she said. "I will go all over the garden and look." She walked instead of skipping, moving slowly with her eyes fixed on the ground. She searched the old border beds and the grass. After going all the way around, trying not to miss anything, she found many more of the sharp, pale green points. She felt excited all over again. It isn't a completely dead garden. She cried out softly to herself. Even if the roses are dead, other things are alive. She did not know anything about gardening, but the grass was so thick in some of the places where the green points were pushing through that she felt they did not have enough room to grow. She searched around until she found a sharp piece of wood, then knelt down to dig and clear away the weeds and grass until there was a nice, clear space around each shoot. Now they look like they can breathe, she said after she finished the first bunch. I am going to do so many more. I'll clear around every single one I can see. If I don't have enough time today, I can come back tomorrow. She went from place to place, digging and weeding. She enjoyed herself so much that she kept going from one flower bed to another, and even into the grass under the trees. The exercise made her so warm that she took off her coat first, and then her hat. Without even realizing it, she was smiling down at the grass and the pale green points the entire time. The robin was incredibly busy. He was very pleased to see gardening starting on his own estate. He had often wondered about Ben Weatherstaff. Wherever gardening was done, all sorts of delicious things to eat were turned up with the soil. Now, here was this new kind of creature who was not even half of Ben's size, yet had the sense to come into his garden and start working right away. Mary worked in her garden until it was time for lunch. In fact, she had lost track of time, and when she finally put on her coat and hat and picked up her skipping rope, she could not believe she had been working for 2 or 3 hours. She had been truly happy the entire time. Dozens of the tiny, pale green points could now be seen in the cleared spaces, looking twice as cheerful as they had when the grass and weeds were smothering them. I will come back this afternoon, she said, looking around her new kingdom and speaking to the trees and the rose bushes as if they could hear her. Then she ran lightly across the grass, pushed open the heavy, slow door and slipped through under the ivy. Her cheeks were so rosy, her eyes so bright, and she ate so much lunch that Martha was delighted.
2 pieces of meat and 2 helpings of rice pudding,
she said.
Oh, Mother will be pleased when I tell her what the skipping rope has done for you.
While digging with her pointed stick, Mary had turned up a white root that looked a bit like an onion. She had put it back in the ground and carefully patted the soil down over it, and now she wondered if Martha could tell her what it was. Martha, she said. What are those white roots that look like onions?
They are bulbs,
answered Martha.
Lots of spring flowers grow from them. The very little ones are snowdrops and crocuses, and the big ones are narcissuses and jonquils and daffodils. The biggest of all are lilies and purple irises. Oh, they are nice. Dickon has a whole lot of them planted in our little garden plot.
Does Dickon know all about them? Asked Mary, as a new idea occurred to her.
Our Dickon can make a flower grow out of a brick walk. Mother says he just whispers things out of the ground.
Do bulbs live a long time? Would they survive for years and years if no one helped them? Mary asked anxiously.
They are the kind of things that take care of themselves,
said Martha.
That's why poor people can afford to have them. If you leave them alone, most of them will work away underground for a lifetime, spreading out and producing little ones. There is a place in the park woods here where there are snowdrops by the thousands. They are the prettiest sight in Yorkshire when spring comes. No one knows when they were first planted.
I wish spring were here now, said Mary. I want to see all the things that grow in England. She finished her lunch and went to her favorite spot on the rug by the fireplace. I wish I had a small spade, she said.
Whatever do you want a spade for?
Asked Martha, laughing.
Are you going to start digging? I must tell Mother about that too.
Mary looked at the fire and thought for a moment. She had to be careful if she wanted to keep her secret kingdom. She was not doing any harm, but if Mr. Craven found out about the open door, he would be furious. He would get a new key and lock it up forever. She could not bear that. This is such a big, lonely place, she said slowly, as if she were thinking it over. The house is lonely, the park is lonely, and the gardens are lonely. So many places are shut up. I didn't do much in India, but there were more people to watch, locals and soldiers marching by, and sometimes bands playing, and my ayah told me stories. There is no one to talk to here except you and Ben Weatherstaff. But you have your work to do, and Ben Weatherstaff won't speak to me very often. I thought if I had a small spade, I could dig somewhere like he does, and maybe make a little garden of my own if he would give me some seeds. Martha's face lit up.
There now.
She exclaimed.
If that wasn't exactly what Mother said. She said there is such a lot of room in that big place, why don't they give her a little plot of her own, even if she doesn't plant anything but parsley and radishes? She would dig and rake away and be absolutely happy over it. Those were her very words.
Were they? Said Mary. She knows so many things, doesn't she?
Oh yes,
Said Martha.
it's like she says, a woman who brings up 12 children learns something besides her ABCs. Children are as good as arithmetic for helping you figure things out.
How much would a small spade cost? Mary asked.
Well,
Martha said thoughtfully.
in Thwaite village there are a couple of shops, and I saw a little garden set with a spade, a rake and a fork all tied together for 2 shillings, and they were sturdy enough to work with too.
I have more than that in my purse, Mary said. Mrs. Morrison gave me 5 shillings, and Mrs. Medlock gave me some money from Mr. Craven.
Did he remember you that much?
Martha exclaimed. Mrs. Medlock said I was to have 1 shilling a week for pocket money. She gives it to me every Saturday. I didn't know what to spend it on.
My word, that's riches.
Said Martha.
You can buy anything in the world you want. The rent of our cottage is only 1 shilling and 3pence, and it's like pulling teeth to scrape that together. Now I've just thought of something.
She added, putting her hands on her hips. What? Mary asked eagerly.
In the shop at Thwaite they sell packets of flower seeds for 1 penny each, and our Dickon knows which are the prettiest ones and how to make them grow. He walks over to Thwaite many a day just for the fun of it. Do you know how to print letters?
She asked suddenly. I know how to write, Mary answered. Martha shook her head.
Our Dickon can only read printing. If you can print, we could write a letter to him and ask him to buy the garden tools and the seeds at the same time.
Oh, you are a good girl, Mary cried. You really are. I didn't know you were so nice. I know I can print letters if I try. Let's ask Mrs. Medlock for a pen, ink, and some paper,
I have some of my own.
said Martha.
I bought them so I could print a short letter to Mother on Sundays. I'll go and get it.
She ran out of the room, and Mary stood by the fire, twisting her thin little hands together with sheer delight. If I have a spade, she whispered, I can make the earth nice and soft and dig up weeds. If I have seeds and can make flowers grow, the garden won't be dead at all, it will come alive. She did not go out again that afternoon. When Martha returned with the pen, ink, and paper, she had to clear the table and carry the dishes downstairs. When she reached the kitchen, Mrs. Medlock was there and gave her chores to do, so Mary waited a long time for her to return. Writing the letter to Dickon was serious work. Mary had not been taught very much because her governesses had disliked her too much to stay. She could not spell very well, but she found that she could print letters when she tried. This was the letter Martha dictated to her.
Dear Dickon, this letter comes hoping to find you well as I am at present. Miss Mary has plenty of money. Would you go to Thwaite and buy her some flower seeds and a set of garden tools to make a flower bed? Please pick the prettiest ones and those that are easy to grow, because she has never gardened before and lived in India, which is very different. Give my love to Mother and everyone at home. Miss Mary is going to tell me a lot more stories, so on my next day off you can hear all about elephants and camels and gentlemen hunting lions and tigers. Your loving sister, Martha Phoebe Sowerby.